Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here. In this video, we're talking about the latest and greatest in gaming and tech news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about Nintendo Switch emulation on PC with Ryujinx, and if you've got a Mac, you're gonna like these updates. So in version 1.1.975 on macOS, it improves performance in Pokemon Legends Arceus. In 1.1.976 on macOS, it fixes a crash in Pikmin 3 when finishing the tutorial, or on the results screen at the end of the day. Moving on, and we're still talking about Switch emulation on PC, but switching over to Yuzu, and the paid testing early access version of Yuzu just got a brand new update. 37.95 just released, and this one fixes level of detail in some games like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. It fixes lens flare in Luigi's Mansion 3. It fixes glow particles in Xenoblade 2 and 3. It fixes shadows in Metroid Prime Remastered. And it implements host conditional rendering, and this should help low-power GPUs in games that use it. Now, it can take up to 2 weeks for us to see those paid testing early access changes on the free mainline build. But the Yuzu development team is pretty quick, and we may see them before then. Next up, we're talking about Anbernic, and Anbernic has just released footage of the RG405V. They say it's the first vertical portable Android handheld engineering machine. If you are interested in this one, I'll drop a link to it in the description below and feel free to check it out. If I'm not mistaken, the RG405V should be the vertical version of the RG405M. So it should have a Unisoc T618 CPU, a Mali G52 GPU, 4 gigs of RAM, and I think 128 gigs of storage. In terms of performance, you can check out a review of the RG405M and get a pretty good idea of it. Next up, we're talking about Laserdisc arcade emulation with Hypseus Singe. I think I butchered that name. Anyways, it's a fork of Daphne designed to play Laserdisc arcade games on PC, and it just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, version 2.11.1 is the latest update. Stern Goal to Go emulation is now supported. GP World has playability improvements. Bilinear scaling is now off by default and more. This one is free, it's open source, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Next up, we're talking about an emulation front end called RetroHub, and RetroHub just got a brand new update. So version 0.2.0 beta just dropped, and if you've got an Ouya, it added controller icons for Ouya controllers. And you can now force close an emulator even if the app is not focused, but you can only do that with a controller. And speaking about retro handhelds, if you've got a Powkiddy RGB 10 Max 3 Pro, you can now pick up the latest version of PickleOS. This one has improved performance, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Moving on, and we're quickly talking about NetherSX2 PS2 emulation on Android. I did a previous video on this one, and it appears that NetherSX2 is getting a lot of popularity. It's even already got a very interesting mascot. I'm honestly not too sure on how I feel about this one. This is apparently one in a long line of emulation mascots. Let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. And speaking about mascots, next up we're talking about TeknoParrot, who just published a brand new release. So Initial D Arcade Stage 0 boots 30% faster. The King of Fighters 13 Climax boots properly. And Skullgirls is booting. Not playable just yet though. There's even more updates here, and I'll drop a link to the Patreon in the description below. Next up, we're talking about Windows emulation on Android with Winlator. In yesterday's video, I mistakenly showed a couple of Winlator screenshots and said they were Cassia, so this is a correction. The screenshots in yesterday's video for Skyrim and Cuphead were from Winlator. And Winlator also has a brand new website, winlator.com. I'll drop a link to it in the description below. The website overall is arguably pretty helpful, including an install guide, and I still don't fully recommend Winlator, but if you wanted to try it out, I'm not stopping you. Next up, we're talking about Red Dead Redemption, and it appears that Red Dead Redemption is heading to the Switch and PS4 on August 17th in digital format, and it will set you back, I think, $50 overall. They're planning on a physical release on October 13th, but we don't have pricing for that just yet. And this is going to be a port, not a remaster, not a remake. Fortunately, it includes Undead Nightmare. Unfortunately, it doesn't include multiplayer, which is kind of a bummer. And I'm curious to see if Yuzu or Ryujinx is going to emulate this one first. And if it's going to work with Yuzu on Android, wouldn't that be something? Next up, if you're a fan of indie games and 2D runners, you may be a fan of Hunter Girls. It's available on Steam, and interestingly enough, it's being demade for the Sega Genesis. They recently launched a Kickstarter asking for $6,600, and they've already met that and still have 21 days to go. And the cost here for the game on Kickstarter is $14. It gets you the ROM file and OST. And if you want a cartridge, it's $47. If you are interested in this one, I'll drop a link to both the Kickstarter and Steam page in the description below. And talking about ports of sorts, it appears that the Simpsons arcade game is heading to the Analogue Pocket. Jotego is currently testing this with a core. And interestingly enough, someone has Bloodborne running at 60 frames per second on a hacked PS5. I'll drop a link to this tweet in the description below in the event that you wanted to see in action. Next up, we're talking about the Steam Deck, and depending on where you are in the world, the Steam Deck might be getting more affordable for you. There's certified refurbished editions apparently popping up on Steam. The 64 gig version is going for $319, down from $399. The 256 version is going for $419, and the 512 gig version is looking like it's going for $519. And not gonna lie here, I haven't usually had the best experience with refurbished products in the past. I've got no idea about the Steam Deck though. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. And speaking about the Steam Deck, if you've got a Steam Deck, you might be excited to know that Baldur's Gate 3 is now Steam Deck verified. That was really quick. Next up here, we're talking about Street Fighter 6, and in a random collaboration, the Ninja Turtles are appearing in the game. I'm not too sure on how I feel about this, but as of August 8th, this collaboration is in full effect. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Next up, we're quickly talking about Threads, and if you use Threads or if you plan on using it, it looks like Threads is getting a search function and also a web version in the next few weeks. And last up here, NVK, an open sourced Vulkan driver for NVIDIA GPUs, is being merged into MESA 23.3. It's still super early on in terms of development and functionality, but this is a nice step forward. Now, we've talked about NVK in the past, but if you are curious about it, I'll drop a link to a very helpful FAQ in the description below, and feel free to check it out. It looks like NVK is only going to be supporting fairly recent NVIDIA GPUs, but they do plan on making it more widely available. And an API will be included in the Linux 6.6 kernel, so if you're on an older kernel, you might want to think about updating. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.